Yesterday, Vice President Harris took part in a radio town hall with Charlemagne the God. He's the host of the popular show, The Breakfast Club. Harris was asked several questions about her plan for Black Americans, as well as her record as a prosecutor.
But it's not just you versus Trump, it's you versus misinformation.
Yes, that's true.
Right? And one of the biggest pieces of misinformation, one of the biggest allegations against you is that you targeted and locked up thousands of Black men in San Francisco for weed. Some say you did it to boost your career. Some say you did it out of pure hate for Black men. Please tell us the facts. What's the facts of that situation?
It's just simply not true. And what public defenders who are around those days will tell you, I was the most progressive prosecutor in California on marijuana cases and would not send people to jail for simple possession of weed. And as vice president, have been a champion for bringing marijuana down on the schedule. So instead of it being ranked up there with heroin, we bring it down. And my pledge is, as president, I will work on decriminalizing it because I know exactly how those laws have been used to disproportionately impact certain populations and specifically Black men. One of the biggest challenges that I face is mis and disinformation. Mm-hmm. And it's purposeful because it is meant to convince people that they somehow should not believe that the work that I have done has occurred and has meaning. My work from the beginning of my career through today has been about, for example, we've talked about it, whether it be on HBCUs, whether it be on healthcare, Black maternal mortality. I am singularly, many would say, one of the highest level leaders in our country to bring the issue of Black maternal mortality to the stage of the White House to address it. The work that I've done that has been about focusing on my knowledge and my experience and my life experience of knowing the entrepreneurship that we have in the community, the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams, and then tapping into that so that not only has my work been about ensuring that we have some of the lowest Black unemployment ever in our country, but that also knowing that that should be a baseline that everybody has a job. Mm-hmm. And what we should be invested in is also building wealth in the community and intergenerational wealth. And I have many, many examples of that. But again, part of the challenge that I face is that they are trying to scare people away because they know they otherwise have nothing to run on. Ask Donald Trump what his plan is for Black America. Ask him. I'll tell you what it is. Look at Project 2025. Project 2025 tells you the plan includes making police departments have stop and frisk policies. The plan includes making it more difficult for workers to receive overtime pay. The plan includes ending the ability of Medicare to negotiate drug prices. You know what we have done? He said he would. We did. Which means that that's how we brought down the cost of prescription medication. His plan includes making it more difficult for working people to get by and to destroy our democracy. You know what he says he'll do? Terminate the Constitution of the United States.
That's right.
I grew up in the Black church. I grew up attending 23rd Avenue Church of God in Oakland, California.
That's church.
Yes, that is church. My pastor is Amos C. Brown of Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, California.
Yes.
I have throughout my career and as vice president and recently been actively engaged in the church and church leaders, not only so we can share in fellowship, but so we can share in what we can do together that is about supporting the community, the strength of the community, the cohesion of the community. And it is my longstanding work and therefore my pledge going forward. I will always work closely with the church because I understand who our church leaders are and who the congregation is. We are talking about people who are driven by faith and the ability to see what is possible. By faith, where I was raised, and I know many of us were, understanding that our God is a loving God, that our faith propels us to act in a way that is about kindness and justice and mercy, that is about lifting one another up. And let's talk about the contrast here. Donald Trump and his followers spend full time trying to suggest that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down. which is absolutely contrary to the church I know.
He sells Bibles, though.
Where our church and my church is about saying true leadership, the measure of that is based on who you lift up. And and then he's selling $60 Bibles or tennis shoes and trying to play people as though that makes him more understanding of the black community. Come on.
Claire, Brother Pat Buchanan and Brother Barnacle in the past, we talk about political athletes. You're either a political athlete or you're not a political athlete. Well, watching that clip suggests that actually you can grow into being a political athlete, and that's something that I've seen Kamala Harris do, especially over the last couple of months. But you see her there, and you see how effective she is. And any Trump person watching this show, take what she just said, take that interview, and find any interview Donald Trump has done over the last 9 years and stack them up. And Claire, you will find one candidate speaks in complete sentences. One candidate speaks in complete thoughts. One candidate can engage in detailed policy discussions. One candidate is capable mentally, intellectually, emotionally of being president of the United States. And one's just simply not. And it's out there for anybody to see. This has nothing to do with ideology. This doesn't even have to do with democracy. Even if Donald Trump were not a threat to democracy, as so many Americans, including myself, believe he is, and I believe he's a threat to American capitalism, even if he weren't. Donald Trump, compared to Kamala Harris right now, is a distant second. And beyond that, spiritually, all these evangelicals that are saying they're going to vote for him, listen to what he says about beating down people, about blood, about a day of violence, of the hatred, calling people crazy if they don't vote for him, don't lift him up, don't give him power. What's Kamala Harris talking about? Kindness, justice, and mercy. It sounds almost as if she has read a Bible, unlike Donald Trump, who makes Bibles in China and then sells them to Americans at like a 500% profit. I mean, your take not only on Kamala yesterday, on the vice president, but also on what we've been seeing out of Donald Trump the last 2 days.
Yeah, I just wish that we could do a side-by-side of his interview with Bloomberg yesterday and her interview with Charlemagne. And I wish we could require every American citizen to watch them side by side in its entirety. And it is a stark contrast. As she has gained in her stature and her poise and her ability to, with discipline, articulate a very clear message about what she will do and what her priorities will be as president, he is going the other way. She is rising to the moment, and he is falling. And I'm so glad you said that, Joe, about setting aside all the policy stuff that is dangerous that he embraces, and just look at his cognitive ability. He is hiding his medical records. He's hiding them. He said in July, he would release his medical records. He said just a week or so ago that he already had. He doesn't realize, I guess, maybe that he hasn't released his medical records. And then he goes on to say that it's very dangerous that Kamala Harris has allergies. Huh? This is a weird turn here that he is refusing, as the oldest man who's ever run for president, as a man who will be in his 80s sitting in the Oval Office. Everything. I get it that everyone was worried about Joe Biden being old. But you know what? Joe Biden did a gut check and said, yeah, I think I should pass the torch. Not Donald Trump. And people should be outraged that he's hiding his medical records. He will not release him, just like I predict he'll never do another interview with somebody who's not in the tank.